Well, hi. Guess what? It is once again time for Unstoppable Mindset. I'm your host, Mike Hingson. Today, we get to interview J.R. Nguo, who is a person who lives in the Colorado area. Is it cold there, JR?
Today is not bad. Today is like close to 50. And unfortunately, tomorrow night supposed to plunge down to minus. And then Thursday supposed to be like high in 1 degree or 2 degrees. We are
Wow.
getting this polar vortex thing coming down. So
It was 58 degrees here today, and it's supposed to get up into the 60s and maybe even a little bit more as the week goes on. But I read an email from somebody this morning who I believe is up in Canada, and they were down to minus 45. So
yes,
there you
yes.
are.
Rapid City, which is kind of a little bit like north, a little bit east of us. They're already experiencing like minus 10 today because the polar vortex is moving south. So,
Well, there you go. Well, we all have our lovely weather. Well,
yeah.
JR specializes a lot in dealing with mental health. He's a public speaker, he's a coach. He inspires people to make positive changes in their lives. And he is also a public speaker, as you might be able to tell by listening to him. And we're really excited that you're here and that you are spending some time with us today. So, JR, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for inviting me and for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
So, let's start kind of as I love to do. Tell me a little bit about you growing up and getting started and all that stuff.
Sure, sure. So, I was born in Taiwan, a little island in Asia that lately has garnered quite a lot of attention in the media. So I was born in Taiwan, and when I was 9 years old, I moved from Taiwan to United States. And I grew up primarily in California between the Bay Area and Los Angeles area. And 2003, I moved to Colorado, where I went to University of Colorado in Boulder. So that's kind of like my journey from Taiwan to California to Colorado. And yeah, and after college, I moved to Hawaii, lived there for like 2 years, worked there. So, and I came back and got my master's. So yeah, so here I am.
What got you to go from California to Colorado to college? Why UNC
So yeah, so
or UC, University of Colorado?
Universal, yes. So what happened was that I grew up in a very interesting setting. I grew up there was a lot of I experienced quite a lot of trauma when I was younger, and then I think part of me I was going through this little bit rebellious phase of my life that like I'm like sick and tired of California. I just want to leave. I just wanted to go. And by the way, I did not go to college right after high school. In fact, I went to college when I was 20, 21 years old. So I waited for a couple of years because I was, again, I was struggling a lot with my mental health, with my depression. And then I just didn't think that I was smart enough that I could go to college. So it took me a while to finally decided that you know what I need to go to college, and then so I just decided that I wanted to leave California. Don't get me wrong, I love California, and but part of me I just feel like I need to explore. I need to check out different states. So I applied for 7 or 8 different universities across the country. And I just decided to go to University of Colorado in Boulder because I just how beautiful the campus is. Like, and then back in the day, I didn't even know what to study. I kind of didn't really know, so I just kind of like chose my destination based on based on the scenery of the town and the campus.
Wow. But you obviously enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. I did. I had a good time at college.
So So when did you graduate roughly?
So I graduated back in 2007.
Okay. And what did you then do for a career?
So from there, that's where I moved to Hawaii. I started working for this international business consulting firm, a small consulting firm. And from there, there was an opportunity for me because the firm also owns a farm in Hawaii. So I decided, and they needed someone to run the farm. And I was like, you know what? I love outdoors, and I'm interested in some sort of farming. And I want to also use this opportunity to practice my management skill. So it's a flower farm, a flower and fruit farm. So that's what I do there for like almost like a year and a half, working on like help to run a farm. So yeah.
Sort of a different take on things, isn't it?
Yes.
And then you came back over to the U.S.
Yes.
and you went
And
back. Go ahead.
yeah, so I came back to Colorado, to
To
Denver
Colorado,
because
right?
yeah, recession hit. And even though I enjoyed working at a farm, but I didn't see like a career for the future. And then I had the opportunity to go back to school. So which I did. I went back to school and I got my master's in nonprofit management.
Okay. And when did you start really focusing on the idea of mental health?
So that was probably a year later after I came back to Colorado. A year later, after I started grad school. So what happened is that throughout my teenage years and throughout my college years in my 20s, I experienced a pretty severe depression. Depression, again, it could trace back to my childhood, whatever reason, but like, yeah, I was experiencing really pretty bad depression. And unfortunately, within our communities, Asian American community, well, even in United States, mental health stigma back in the days was very heightened, right? I remember back in college when I was experiencing depression, I would open up to my friends, try to share with my friends, and they literally would tell me to get over it, right? They would literally tell me that I'm too emotion for a man, right? I get shut down. So I didn't really receive any emotional and mental health support. And at the same time, I was very fortunate that in college I had this staff slash professor that she was extremely inspirational to me. She was like my mentor. And whenever I was going through a hard time, she would make time for me and talk to me. And she's one of those people that never guilt trip me, never forced me to do anything. And occasionally she would suggest that, hey, JR, have you considered, seeing a therapist? Have you considered seeing a professional? She never ever forced me, right? And of course, due to mental health stigma, I was like, no, I don't need therapy. I'm good. I can do this. And and I think what she did was she planted a lot of seeds in my head that's okay to seek help. So when I was in grad school, again, like even when I was living in Hawaii, working in Hawaii in a paradise, right? I was so depressed. The place I was living in literally was 5 minutes driving away from the beach. And the whole time I was living there, I have only gone to the beach 4 times. Just how depressed I was. So yeah, so what happened? So in grad school, a year later, I encountered this organization called NEPIMA. Their mission is to advocate mental health wellness for Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Native Hawaiians.
Can you spell that name?
So it's NAAPIMHA,
Got it.
NEPIMA.
Okay.
And then the executive director offered me a part-time position. And that's when I officially started my mental health journey and my mental health recovery, both personally and professionally. Professionally, I started working for this organization. I started learning about a lot about mental health policies, a lot of mental health tools, amazing information and materials. And around that time, I was connected with a therapist. And this therapist, Dr. Lisa Strober, she was amazing. She became my therapist for 9 years. So therefore, so kind of like around 2000, yeah, 2009, that's when I really be, and the main reason I decided to work for this nonprofit that advocate for mental health and also decided to seek professional help through therapy is because I was so sick and tired in being in pain. Right, I'm sick and tired of being depressed, and I was very lucky that I had those opportunities, both professionally and personally, to explore, to learn about mental health and be on this mental health recovery journey.
That's quite an abrupt, well, not abrupt necessarily, but that's quite a change going from a guy who thinks, well, I don't need a therapist. And then you eventually decided that that really wasn't such a bad thing to explore.
Yes. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I think, what's that saying? I took a leap of faith. I didn't know what to do. I just like, you know what? What, what, like, I was already in so much pain. What could get worse? Like it's almost like, and my logic back then was like, less of two evils. Like no matter what, I tried different things. You know what? Let's try this new thing. So yeah.
Yeah. And you seem like you agree with having tried it, and it's made a great deal of difference for you.
Oh, huge, huge. And I too admit that first 2, 3 years of therapy and working in the PIMA, learning about mental health, it wasn't easy. There was a huge learning curve, and there was a huge how do you say it? It was huge struggle too.
Mm-hmm.
To just acknowledge that, oh my God, I am depressed. To just coming to that realization and slowly working with my therapist and working with I signed up for different programs, different trainings to improve myself as well. And yeah, it was hard. I would say first 2, 3 years was very, very difficult. And finally, I think after 3, 4 years, I had this like breakthrough, like, and that's when I started really seeing myself that that's when I really started believing that there's hope for me because recovery is very possible.
Mm-hmm. What does NPIMA stand for? Do you know what?
Yeah, so NAPIMA stands for National Asian American Pacific Islander Mental Health Association.
Got it. So something for anyone who is interested to obviously explore and look for.
Exactly. It's a great organization. They are still alive. They're still doing great, thriving. On the side, I'm still providing them some work, some consultation. So it's a great organization.
Mm-hmm. So so when you were seeing a therapist, were you doing anything in a career, or what were you doing?
Yeah, I was just working at NAPIMA. I started out with project coordinator, and then we started getting different federal grants. So I kind of like became the project or program director. I was running the NAPIMA's college program. So we got some funding to provide mental health education to Asian American college students. And I have to say, I'm very fortunate through that program. It is called Friends Do Make a Difference. Through that program, and also later on through my own business, that I have the experience of speaking at over 50 different universities across the country. So I just and just imagine like, and I would say about 40 of them were in person. So I got to travel a lot, see a lot of those college campuses. And on top of that, I through that program, we got invited to teach two different classes at University of Colorado in Boulder. So I have experience in the academic side and also the student affairs side.
So you um, traveled to a lot of different universities and colleges and so on. That must have been, I would assume, pretty rewarding for you to do. What
Oh,
was that like?
extremely rewarding. I loved it. It's just there's a couple levels or different perspectives that I want to share about this experience. First is that almost everyone that I know of, especially younger people, younger professionals, they all say that they want to travel a lot. They want to travel and stuff like that. And then I actually have the opportunity to travel for work, to check out different campuses. So it's very, very rewarding. Definitely expand my horizon to see how diverse our country is, And on top of that, to work with such diverse student organizations, talking about career-wise, definitely helped me tremendously. So that's one part. And the second part that I want to talk about is that I want to give credit to these college students leaders, right? Without their courage, without their bravery that wanted to talk about mental health, wanted to break through mental health stigma, I wouldn't be able to do what I did, right? So I give all my credits to them that they are willing to advocate, to fight for funding to bring us out. Another thing that I want to talk about is that I still remember the first mental health workshop that I gave. And it was at George Washington University, and it was through a student-run conference. And again, that was back in 2010, and we know that like mental health stigma was still pretty bad. Actually, even now, mental health stigma is still pretty present in our society. Just imagine 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And guess what? Only like about 7 or 8 students show up at our workshop in 2010. That same conference, student-run conference, invited me to go back to speak again in February 2020, right before COVID hit.
Right.
And this time was at University of Pittsburgh. And guess what? I facilitated 3 workshops for their conference at University at Pitt. And guess what? Every single workshop, the classroom, the rooms were packed with students. In fact, one of my very last workshops, I believe over 70 students show up, and a lot of there were no chairs, no seats left. They were sitting on the floor. The reason I'm sharing this is I'm not trying to tuning my horn, stuff like that. But the reason I'm sharing this is that is progress. Again, going back to these students, these student leaders, they are noticing that, okay, they are noticing that the importance of mental health, right? And they are willing to fight, to advocate, to destigmatize mental health. And within 9 years, change does happen, and change can happen. Went from my very first one, barely 7, 8, 9 students show up, to 3 workshops that were packed with students, each one probably at least 50 students. So I just want to show and elaborate that how happy or how proud I am and how rewarding to see these students, young folks, young professionals, are willing to tackle these tough issues.
So you think that the reason that you had so many students is at the workshops is that there's more education or more awareness about the whole issue of mental health, and that enough people were concerned about it perhaps in their own lives, or they know other people that are dealing with it, that they wanted to come and hear you?
Exactly. It's progress. Exactly. Even though prior to COVID, mental health, not many people talked about mental health, but still, I was witnessing this movement, this change happening on college campuses.
What do you teach in the workshop? What do you tell students?
So yeah, so that's a really good question. So I start off saying that my workshops, my speeches, my presentation, my training, they are not clinical. They are not therapeutic. All my training is about prevention and educational. So my workshop, I have a series of workshops, and it goes from what I call mental health 101, learning about what's mental health stigma, just awareness, all the way to suicide awareness. Of course, in between, we learn about signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety, all that. So a lot of informational, a lot of educational, and also I provide a lot of practical tools on how to support each other. Right, there's different type. I have different sets of tools. So, for example, one of the sets is how can we, when we see our friends, when we see our family going through mental health challenge, how can we provide practical support? That's one. The second set of tool that I often offer is that when you are going through mental health challenge, when you're noticing that you might experiencing some sort of depression, anxiety, how can you internally break down, overcome all these noises of stigma, right? And seek support and seek help. And the last subtle tool that I often teach about is that, okay, once you acknowledge that you are going through some mental health challenge and you are willing to do something, then I have a subtle tool, again, more on the prevention side or early intervention on how can we improve our mental health. So again, it's not clinical, it's prevention or early intervention. And the analogy I like to use is that it's wellness. It's about teaching students, teaching people how to be healthy, eat healthy, exercises. So I'm not about going to hospitals, not about treating people or diagnosing people.
So you went through a whole period of depression that clearly took you on a journey that eventually led you to begin to give workshops and so on. But what caused, or can you pinpoint what started you down the road of having depression, or can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, well, an example I like to use is my immigration story, right? I moved to this country as 9 years old. I didn't know any English, and then I had to learn English. So, of course, I went to the school. I was bullied. I was making fun of, right? And then there's another component of potential racism there, that people making fun of me because my accent, the way that I look. So all these contributed to a lot of trauma, right? And just imagine, as a 9 years old boy, that I had to uproot myself from Taiwan, my home, to a country that I did not know,
Mm-hmm.
to a place that I didn't know. I'm talking about just the weather, the climate, the food, right? Friends, family. That itself contributed, well, did do some damage, will cause some trauma inside me. And of course, when I was young, no one talked about mental health. No one, like, pretty much I was told I just had to tough it out, right? I got bullied, and that is one of the examples of how I think trigger or cause my depression later on.
Hmm. So where were your parents in that whole process?
So my parents, they were so when I was so technically I went to a boarding school in the United States. So my parents were in Taiwan. They were
Ah,
still living in Taiwan.
okay.
So my parents would be there, try to support me as best as they could. But at the same time, we're talking about 5,000 miles away over
Yeah.
Pacific Ocean. So they were trying to be there as much as they could. At the same time, it just yeah, it's hard. And you just remember that was in the early 90s, right? That was before cell phones, smartphones. So if I had to talk to my parents, I literally had to go to a phone booth either early in the morning or later in the afternoon because of time zone
Right.
difference. And I had to collect call. I had to put quarters into phone booth. So there were no smartphone. There's no WhatsApp or FaceTime. None of that. So even communication wise, it was challenging.
Did they send you to the boarding school here, or did you want to just move here, or at
So
nine?
yeah, they did because I was part of that wave. Um, that back in the 80s and 90s, that East Asian countries, like using Taiwan as an example, they were sending a lot of their kids to the United States for better education and hoping that their kids might have a better lifestyle. So I was part of that cultural norm.
Would it have made a big difference if your parents had been able to come over with you?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
And again, there's no way, there was no way that I can know. At the same time, I would assume it could be better or it could be worse. I don't know.
So you came here and you had to deal with so many kinds of differences. And I can appreciate that trying to get through all of that can be a real challenge. And in your case, you did have to deal with a lot of depression, but eventually you worked through it.
Yes, it took me a long, long, long time. Yep.
So you have continued to speak, and I'm assuming, at least this is my opinion, and I'll explain why, but I'm assuming even speaking and talking about it and doing workshops is therapeutic for you.
Oh, exactly. And I think that is one of the main reasons I do what I do. I'm in this field is part of my continual healing process.
Yeah. For me, I remember, of course, being in the World Trade Center on September 11th and escaping, and people kept saying how traumatic it had to be and so on. But one of the things that I tell people even today is that although I didn't think about it a lot, because I had to, or I decided to let myself be interviewed and talk to a lot of reporters, and then also began to speak about it.
Hmm.
Doing that, well, and I can tell you're with me, doing that really helps put it in perspective. It causes you to think about it, think about whatever it is, in my case, the World Trade Center, in your case, the things that you went through. And you finally are able to put that in perspective. And so today, is it painful to talk about September 11th? I wouldn't say it's painful. Is it meaningful? And do I learn from it? Every time I talk, I get to learn and think more about it and learn new things, which helps. But talking about it does really put it in perspective.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. And then not only on top of building on top of what you just shared, exactly, like I appreciate what you just shared, and because I'm totally agree with you. And building on top of what you just shared is that I think another privilege that I have is that only talking about it, sharing my stories, or teaching about it is also hearing other people's stories,
Mm-hmm.
students or young professionals or professionals sharing their own stories about their struggles with mental health or their struggles with different life issues. And when they share their stories, it helps me to put my own experiences into perspectives. And I also learning from them, right? And sometimes they would point out different parts of my speech or my stories that I didn't even realize. Talking about blind spots, right? So part of that interactive, that mutual conversation and dialogue is definitely it can be very powerful.
Mm-hmm. I love to say that if I'm not learning more than my audiences when I speak, or than listeners to this podcast, or even the guests on the podcast, then I'm not doing my job right. Because
Yeah.
I think that there's so much to learn. And I have grown to recognize and understand this is all an adventure. I've thought about the internet for years, that it's a treasure trove. Yes, there are challenges with the internet, but what an incredible place to explore. What a treasure trove of experiences and so on we get to deal with, and hopefully get to understand as we move forward.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you clearly are able to, continue to do that. Well, you also do talk some about diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workshops or in things that you do, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for this question. So I I like to joke around that. Um, I so my two main fields are mental health and diversity, equity, inclusion. And I like to joke around that. Talking about mental health, I can talk about it every day, every minute, every second, right? It's like eating fried chicken. I love fried chicken. I can eat fried chicken every day, every meal. And talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity, it's like eating broccoli. I don't really prefer eating broccoli. I don't mind eating broccoli. I just think it's so important to eat broccoli for our health, for the environment, for you name it. And that is the example I like to use is that like mental health is my passion. And teach about diversity, equity, inclusion is because I think it's such an important topic for myself, for my soul, and also for our society, for our country. So, and I think you might be thinking about how I started with the diversity, equity, inclusion type of
Love to
work.
learn more about that. Sure.
So what happened was back in when I was at college, as after the first year I lived in a dorm, and then and the summer after first year, students had to like be kicked out or move home and stuff like that. So I did. I moved back to California, and that summer, I my buddy he was driving, and we got into a car accident, and I had whiplash. Right. So what that means is for the next whole month, I couldn't move my neck at all. I had to be stationary. And around that time, for those folks out there don't know what Blockbuster is, around that time, Blockbuster started unlimited rental. So you pay a flat fee for the month, you get unlimited DVD. Unfortunately, the place I was staying, there was a Blockbuster just a couple blocks down the street. So since we couldn't move, I used to love to exercise, work out. We couldn't do that. All we could do was either lay down on the bed or sit up, right? So we rented movies after movies. On average, we were watching 4 or 5 movies per day.
Hmm.
And we did that for a month. So you do the math. That 1 month, I probably watched over 100 films, to the point that whenever I put a movie in, within 5 minutes, I can tell you what's going on. I can tell you who's going to die, who's going to live. You know, I already know the plot. And around that time, uh, back on my campus at college, there's this theater group called Interactive Theater. They were looking for actors, right? And then and me and my friend, I saw the email, and me and my friend were just joking around, say that, hey, you know what, we should be actors because we have seen so many films. So I signed up for audition. And I went back to campus, second year started, school started, and I totally forgot about the audition. In fact, I was out partying with my neighbors the night before audition. And my neighbor, my good friend Katie, she was like, hey, JR, don't you have an audition tomorrow? I was like, oh my God, yes, I totally forgot about it. So I didn't really prepare. And then my friend Katie was like, do you have a monologue? Do you have anything prepared? I'm like, I don't know any of that. Like, I don't know and so I just like, whatever, I'm just going to wing it. So I did. I went to the audition, and then I got a job. There were, from what I heard later on, there were like 35 people auditioned, and they only brought on 3 actors. So I was one of them. And turns out that interactive theater project was a social justice theater. They use what we call theater for the oppressed by Augusto Bao. So the idea is that we perform these little scenes in classrooms, in community centers, and the scenes are based on real people's stories about experiencing racism, sexism, or homophobia. So all our stories revolve around fighting fighting racism, sexism, homophobia. And through that program, I was in that program for 3 years. That's when it really kick-started my awareness, my understanding of different social issues that's going on in our country. And that's pretty much the beginning of my diversity, inclusion, and equity work.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, after I graduated, I was still kind of involved with that theater program throughout the years. And on top of that, working at NAPIMA, we were doing a lot of mental health work. And we always emphasize the importance of cultural considerations into mental health work. So the key word here is called social determinants for health, or social determinant for mental health. And through this type of work, I become more and more aware that, oh my God, our society is not equal, right? There's a lot of people are suffering because of hate and discrimination. And therefore, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, when I decided to start my own company, that I make diversity, inclusion, and equity work as one of my priorities. So, yeah. So that, long story short, that's kind of like how it started.
Well, one of the things that, of course, comes to mind for me, being a little prejudiced, but when the opportunity comes up, I bring it up, is what we don't see when we talk generally about the whole subject of diversity, equity, and inclusion are disabilities. We tend to be left out completely, even though, according to the CDC, 25% of all people in this country have some sort of disability. And that never gets brought into the conversation.
Yes.
Or so rarely.
I totally agree with you. And I have to admit, I'm guilty of that too. Like, because for the longest time when I work in diversity, inclusion, equity work, I was focusing on racism, fighting against racism and sexism and homophobia. And only until 3-4 years ago that I'm like, wait a minute, how about people with physical disabilities, right? And I have to admit that I am still learning about different type of physical disability. I'm still learning about this field. So I often would talk about it, will highlight from the elementary knowledge I have just to bring awareness. And this is something that I'm continue to work on to learn, so I can in the future that I can incorporate into my training more confidently. But I totally agree with you. And I like to say that um, is such an important issue that oftentimes is forgotten, is often forgotten.
Not just physical disabilities, but mental disabilities too. Neurodivergence,
Oh,
autism
yes.
are also, well, and depression for that matter would certainly probably come under the definition of having some sort of a disability as well. The reality is we don't tend to really collectively as a society tolerate difference very well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. I agree.
And it is something that we really should do more of, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Yes, I agree. Yep.
So when did you start, because you mentioned it earlier, your own business?
So yeah, so I started in 2017. And the reason I started is because I love working at NAPIMA. At the same time, NAPIMA's focus is very specific. It's about Asian American, Pacific
Mm-hmm.
Islanders, and Native Hawaiians. And I wanted to reach out. I want to expand my experience and my horizon. And so that's why I started my own business that talking about mental health and also working with more diverse population with the Black communities, the Hispanic communities, and the white communities overall. So yeah, so that's why I decided to start my own business.
Well, tell me more about your business, if you will.
Yes, yeah. So my business is called Coffee with JR. The
I
reason
love the
I
title.
Yeah, thank you. The reason I came up with this name is that I truly believe that if we really want to achieve world peace, or whatever words you name, equality, equity, happiness, if we want to fight hate and discrimination, all that, I believe in one conversation at a time. Let's sit down and let's talk. Because I truly believe that we have more commonality than differences. And oftentimes, because due to part of our evolution, we like to lump things together. And hate is taught, right? We were taught with discrimination, with hate and prejudice. And one of the best way I believe is that one-on-one conversation. Hey, let's sit down, let's talk, and let's learn from each other. So that is the start. That's the reasoning behind the name behind Coffee with JR. And yeah, and I focus on providing culturally appropriate mental health educational training and diversity inclusion training. And give an example when it comes to DEI type of training. I remember, and was even before COVID, just right before COVID. I spoke at, I think 2018 or 19, I spoke at a conference. And then after my speech, I had some time, I just decided to check out a workshop, right? And I saw, oh, there's a diversity inclusion panel going on. And I walked into the room, and guess what? There were like 4 panelists sitting on the front. And all 4 panelists, they were white identified folks. And for me, the moment I saw that, I turned around and walked out. Don't get me wrong. I believe, like, I have a lot of good friends that are white identified people that are huge advocates for DEI. They are amazing people. At the same time, for me, representation matters, right? When I walk into a room expecting or thinking about talking about diversity and inclusion, talking about different issues, and when I just witness 4 individuals that are, at least from appearance wise, that are the same. And I start questioning the authentic, the legitimacy of this panel, and they could be, these 4 individuals might be amazing, they're expert in the, I don't know, they could be. At the same time, I just think that, again, representation matters. And this is what we've been advocating for decades, for centuries, that we need representation. So therefore, that I started my own company is that like we need more representation when talking about these important issues, especially also in mental health field as well.
Yeah. The issue is that if we don't learn to demand and work toward that representation and truly work hard to be heard and be part of the whole process, then we never will. And what I mean by that is it also is true that you can't go off and just form some organization or form some subgroup that goes off and does what it does by itself and doesn't really get back integrated into the mainstream. I know I've seen a lot of conversations. Lately I've been reading some conversations on a particular listserv about women who don't speak up. And the issue is that the listserv is for a particular product. It's about a product. So it's not relating to sex or anything, but what I'm hearing women say is they don't speak up as much as men because they don't feel as comfortable and so on. So they're talking about starting a separate group. And my opinion and my observation is you could start a separate group, but then you're separate. You're not part of the mainstream and you're not pushing to be part of the mainstream. And in this case, it's talking about technical stuff. It has nothing to do with sexual orientation, but they're bringing that into it, which is a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, so I have heard similar example before. And the way that I view or I understand is that there's a couple different levels that I see is that it comes down to one of them is safety, right? In tech industry, based on experience working with the tech industry, is that there is a lot of misogynist, a lot of sexism, language going on. And on top of that, talking about sexual inappropriation, not appropriate sexual languages, and a lot of women have experienced that, and they are, first of all, they are talking about safety. They don't feel safe. They don't feel comfortable to contribute, to be part of it. Second is that using listserv with different form or different setting. Oftentimes it's started by man, and for the longest time, these platforms have been ran by man. Therefore, is cater to men and have man standard expectation. Therefore, when other genders decided to contribute, oftentimes it could create that little friction, especially because I like to say it's two-way streets, right? From the creator side, from the man's perspective, this is quote unquote men's world. This is our expectations. And when we don't feel like changing, when we don't build an environment to be inclusive for women, yes, then women definitely is not going. They don't want to be part of it. It's something in this logic or this experience can be applied to people of color, right? So often that is two-way street. Is that like how can the owners, the people that control, the people are in power of these platforms, how can they educate themselves, become more inclusive? So therefore, whoever that can join can have a sense of belonging. And this requires a lot of reflection, a lot of humbleness, acknowledging that, hey, I'm coming from the perspective of man, maybe coming from the perspective of man that's in authority. So how can I fine tune myself to change a little bit so I can be more inclusive? So yeah, so that's my thought.
One of the things that came out in it's an email listserv. One of the things that came out today is that maybe, and by the way, it's mostly blind people So it's not like there are pictures or any of those sorts of things. One of
Gotcha.
the things that came out today was maybe there needs to be a female moderator added to the
Mhm.
original people who founded it, which who were men, and everyone
Mhm.
acknowledges
Mhm.
that. And that certainly is something that makes a lot of sense because
Yes.
ultimately, though, I still am of the opinion that separate will not be equal. And even if they discuss just the same things as men do on the list, which is all about the technical aspects of what we're talking about, how to use products and so on, and
Mhm.
not going further.
Mhm.
Separate means that we'll lose out on a very rich part of the culture, and
Yes.
and so will women. And so we need to figure out ways to deal with that and
Yes.
get people to all be part of the same group. And I recognize that uh, women are oftentimes intimidated because they come from a different viewpoint. And I can appreciate that. But
Mhm.
I think the solution still is not a different group, but
Mhm.
rather figuring out ways to make sure that we truly integrate
Yeah.
and endorse that, especially since also, let's be real, there are more women than men on the earth anyway.
Yes. I agree. Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. I think the more we can integrate, the more we can build these spaces, this opportunity for people to integrate and work together. That I'm all for that.
Yeah, it it has to be that way. Um, Otherwise, we're never going to see people joining forces.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what do you do in your business today? How does it work?
So how does it work? So I have to say I'm very fortunate, really happy that majority of my business, my speaking gigs are referral based, which I'm really happy about it. So yeah, so my normally um I write a lot of content. I try to, of course, I have certain content that I reuse a lot, but every year I try to, especially during wintertime holiday seasons, I try to take this downtime to update my content or to create new ones. And I enjoy working with just whoever that's willing to just try it out. I been very fortunate that I've been working with so many amazing people that coming from the place of curiosity, coming from the place of wanting to learn, wanting to mutually exchange information. So yeah, so this is what my business look like. Yeah, I write a lot too. Every month, I publish a blog through my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every month. So in the blog, I write a lot about my own mental health journey as an immigrant, my own mental health experience, and also I love to travel. So sometimes I will write a lot of my travel stories. So it could be a mental health blog or a travel blog. Just depends on the month.
In reading some of the material that you've put out, including your bio and so on, you refer to mental health first aid. What is that?
So yeah, so mental health first aid is similar to physical first aid, right? Physical and mental health first aid is for mental health. Again, how is train people how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health challenges or crisis and provide practical support, such as encourage professional help. Again, like using physical first aid as an example, physical first aid, when you see someone bleeding, your job is to tend to the wound, right? Make sure you try to provide as much as support until until the professionals show up. Physical, mental health, physical first aid, we were taught we don't do operations, we don't diagnose, right? We don't cut open the heart or stuff like that. We are there to provide support until professionals show up. Same thing with mental health first aid is to be there to provide practical support until professionals show up.
So with your company today, and obviously you provide first aid when you can, but what kind of projects, what kinds of things are you doing with your company? Exactly how does it work?
Yeah, so what do you mean by that?
So what exactly do you do with your company? Do people hire you, or do you give courses online? What exactly do you
Yes.
do?
Yes, people hire me. So normally companies, organization, university, they hire me to go in to provide training, workshops. Sometimes it is what I call one hit wonder. They hire me one time, I do one workshop finish. Or there's some companies will hire me like on a consistent base, meaning that I might provide 6 workshops in the span of 6 months, one per month. So anywhere in between, will conferences might hire me, will ask me to go speak. So yeah, so and then on top of that, other organizations might contract me to do projects. For example, I'm working with this organization called 1000 Cranes for Recovery. It's based in Los Angeles, and I'm working with them to execute some of their contracts from Los Angeles County to teach mental health to Asian American population in Los Angeles area. So yeah.
Do you do any online courses or things that people can subscribe to, or
So yeah,
any
so
kind of
I
online classes?
yeah, I started one. I started creating one through Teachable. I'm still going through the final review, and yeah, so my goal in 2023 is to have this online course, self-paced online course live. So yeah,
And what will it be about?
so this one, it is about how to develop your wellness action plan, a wellness action plan that actually work. So this is step by step how you can go from why do you want to improve yourself. It could be physically, emotionally, mentally, or socially. And from there, I'm going to walk the students through on how they can break it down, what they want, their goals, objectives to deliverable actions, and how can they keep themselves accountable. So that is one of the courses that I actually, in fact, I have created. I just need to do a little bit more editing. And there's other courses that I want to create, such as, yeah, how can we like when you know someone, a person, it could be a friend, it could be a family member that have experienced discrimination through racism, right? And how can you provide practical support to that person?
Mm.
It could be mental health support with different support. So I have different set of tools. So yeah.
Well, if we can help you in talking about disabilities and especially blindness and so on, don't you ever hesitate to reach out.
Yes, I would love that. In fact, as my learning curve into more about disabilities, if you're up to it, I want to write a blog about disabilities.
Okay.
Because I have about 3,000 subscribers, and every month I have about like 500-600 people read my newsletter, my blog. So I think it will be something. Is Michael, if there's something that you want to collaborate, I would love that. So
Sure.
I myself can learn more, and
Let's
my
talk.
audience, my readers can learn more about this whole field.
Let's talk about it. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, we didn't do coffee, but it was very fun to have over an hour with JR. I really
Yeah,
appreciate that.
thank
If
you.
people want to reach out to you and learn more about what you do and maybe explore hiring you in some way, how do they do that?
Yes, they can email me directly at, so my email address is coffee with JR and my last name KUO Guo, coffee with JR Guo at gmail.com. Or they can just reach out to me at my website at www.coffeewith jr.com, and they can just send me a message.
Well, that's cool. And I know we found you on LinkedIn, so I know you're there as well.
Yes, LinkedIn. Yep, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot. I am not on Facebook or Instagram, social media that much. So LinkedIn, it can be another good platform. So my LinkedIn is just straight up JR Guo, Kuo, my last name. Well, if you look under Coffee with JR, you should be able to find me. And normally I get back to people pretty fast within a day or two. So yeah.
Have you written any books yet?
I have not. That being said,
yeah,
I know. That being said, I am I'm working. We just wrap it up. I'm one of the contributors to this book, an academic book, and supposed to get published by March 2023. I don't even know the title of the book yet. So I just 2 weeks ago I finalized with the editor, finalized everything. So fingers crossed, will be published in
keep
March.
us posted.
I will.
I'd like to tell the world about it from our perspective when it's available, and we certainly would love to have you back again to continue the discussions. And maybe you need to do your own podcast, and that's another story.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Well, you're absolutely welcome.
Yeah, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Well, thank you. I hope people enjoyed it. I hope wherever you're listening to this, you enjoyed it and you found it interesting and helpful. If there is any way that JR can be of value to you, please reach out to him. Coffee at with JR Kuo, Kuo, or coffeewithjr.com.
Exactly.
And so I hope that people will do that. So again, your email address one more time, coffeewithjrguo at gmail.com.
Exactly.
So hopefully people will reach out. I hope you all do. I'd love to hear what you thought about today's podcast. Please email us at michaelhi@accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com, or go visit our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate it. We value your input. We value your ratings. It's what keeps this all going. So once again, JR, thank you very much. I enjoyed this and look forward to having more discussions with you.
Sounds good. Thank you.